Hello from the Connection Audit. We're your hosts, Kirsten and Blake.
Today we're asking a question for anyone who has spent time in swinging, E&M, or modern sexual culture and noticed a pattern. Why does it so often feel as though women choose, while men have to be chosen? And what sits underneath that dynamic?
If we misread the pattern, we reach for the wrong explanation. We tell ourselves it is about desirability, confidence, or attention. We reduce it to a marketplace story. But in spaces like this, the issue is not status. It is risk, trust, filtering, and the difference between someone who feels easy to be around and someone who feels like hard work.
When women say they are choosing, they are not usually talking only about looks. They are often screening for whether a man feels safe, calm, discreet, aware, generous, and able to hear no without protest. They are asking, even instinctively, will this feel grounded and respectful, or will this become admin?
That helps explain why some men become frustrated. Repeated non-selection can stir shame, comparison, ego threat, and the bruising sense of not being chosen. When men do not know what to do with that feeling, some start solving the wrong problem. They become louder, more persistent, more performative, more status-driven. They posture, they push, they try to create traction through intensity.
But that usually makes them harder to choose, not easier.
So what we wanted to explore today is an important idea. Maybe the real divide here is not men versus women. Maybe it is the gap between pressure and trust, between performance and presence, between trying to win people over and becoming someone who feels safe, steady, and easy to trust.
This matters in swinging and other non-monogamous spaces where consent, pacing, social intelligence, and emotional regulation matter enormously. If those qualities are missing, women end up carrying too much of the burden.
The question is whether too many men are treating attraction like a sales problem when it is often a trust problem, and whether what matters most is not swagger, pressure, or bravado, but steadiness, self-regulation, discretion, warmth, and the ability to create ease rather than friction.
So this episode is an audit of that dynamic. What women are screening for first, why some men become reactive when they are not chosen, how posturing becomes an armor response, and what it would mean to shift the culture away from pressure and towards presence.
Because confidence is not the same as force. Attention is not the same as invitation. And chemistry is never entitlement.
Better connection does not usually come from trying harder to get picked. It comes from becoming safer to trust.
Okay, let's get into it. Why does the dynamic show up so often in the lifestyle? What are women filtering for? And what would it take for more men to become easier to choose without women carrying the whole burden?
This is the connection audit.
Well, let us start by auditing the culture we're all operating in. Because what we're seeing is that this phrase, women choose, men are chosen, it's basically floating around everywhere in modern dating and lifestyle spaces right now.
Yeah, it really is everywhere.
Right. And it sounds catchy. It has this sort of ring of absolute truth to it. But when you actually dissect it, it's a dangerously reductive way to look at human connection.
100%. It's entirely reductive.
Because if we just accept this phrase at face value, we're essentially, building our entire approach to relationships on a completely flawed foundation.
Spot on. It's one of those slogans that feels true on the surface, which is exactly why it spread so rapidly through community forums and, advice columns.
Right.
But the moment you accept it as a foundational rule, it just distorts how you view every single interaction you have. It forces this rigid binary onto something that is infinitely more complex.
Absolutely. And I really want to challenge the analogy that always underpins that phrase. Because we are implicitly treating human connection like a harsh economic marketplace.
Yes.
Or, perhaps more accurately, like a really intimidating job interview. You have the woman sitting behind this massive mahogany desk, holding all the power, tapping her pen, just sort of evaluating a queue of desperate applicants.
That's the visual everyone has in their head, isn't it?
It is, and it frames women as these immovable transactional gatekeepers and men as supplicants just begging for a position.
Right.
But if you enter a connection with that mindset, that one person has all the power and the other has none, you are setting everyone up for profound resentment before a single word is even spoken.
That is the pattern, right? When we look at this through the lens of platform design, if we take the Blossom Society, for example, which is a community platform that actually had to build digital architecture and moderation rules around this exact dynamic, we have to acknowledge that the phrase is, it's directionally useful, but ultimately it's far too blunt.
Right, it's a blunt instrument.
Exactly. If we accept it lazily, we just end up hardening grievance in men and defensiveness in women. It creates this pseudo-biological certainty.
Oh, yes, it's just biology argument.
100%. People start saying, well, this is just nature. Men are the hunters, women are the selectors. That's just how it is. And that completely ignores the profound emotional nuance of how modern humans actually build trust and navigate vulnerability.
But wait, let me push back on that for just a second.
Sure.
Because if you speak to a lot of men in the lifestyle, they will tell you that it does feel like a biological certainty to them.
Right, their lived experience.
Exactly. They look at their inbox, which might be completely empty, and then they look at a female partner's inbox, which has 50 unread messages.
Yeah.
To them, the marketplace analogy does not feel like a myth at all.
No, it feels like the daily reality.
Right. It feels like the daily reality they're living in. So how do we tell them that the marketplace is a myth when their lived experience feels so imbalanced?
That is a crucial question, honestly. And it is why we have to separate volume from value.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
Well, yes, the volume of attention is drastically different. We can't deny that, maths. But the marketplace myth falls apart because it assumes that attention equals power and that all attention is desirable.
Right.
The reality we're seeing is that for women, 90% of that inbox volume is not an advantage. It is a massive liability.
Yes.
It's noise, it's pressure, it's people demanding time and energy without offering any safety in return. So when a man says the game is rigged, she holds all the cards, he is completely misunderstanding the nature of the cards she's holding.
He thinks she has a winning lottery ticket.
Exactly. He thinks she's won the lottery when in fact she has a full-time administrative job of threat assessment.
That reframing is just essential, because if a man believes the game is rigged and she just arbitrarily dispenses access, then, well, he never has to reflect on his own approach.
Precisely. It acts as a massive psychological shield.
Right. He never has to ask himself if his tone was off, or if he was moving too fast, or if he totally missed a crucial social cue. He could just throw his hands up and say, well, the marketplace is unfair. I didn't get chosen because I don't have a six-pack or I don't drive the right car.
Exactly. It is so much easier to blame an invisible marketplace than to look at our own conduct.
100%. And that takes us perfectly into auditing the behavior itself. We need to look really closely at what choosing actually means for women in these spaces.
We do.
Because the marketplace myth suggests that choosing is this carefree, empowering, frivolous activity, like walking into a boutique with an unlimited budget and just pointing at what you want.
Right, I'll take that one and that one.
Exactly. But if we are honest about the reality, the female experience is incredibly rigorous.
It is exhausting. Honestly, for women, choosing is rarely a carefree popularity contest. It is a rigorous, ongoing filter for safety.
Yes. Okay, let's unpack this. What exactly are they filtering for?
Well, when a woman is taking her time to respond, or when she's assessing a potential connection, she is carrying an asymmetry of risk that men simply do not experience in the same way.
Right.
She is navigating social risk. So, the reputation damage if things go poorly, emotional risk, and very real bodily risk. We cannot ignore the physical reality of what it means for a woman to meet a man she doesn't fully know yet.
No, absolutely not. Let's unpack that asymmetry of risk a bit more, because it really dictates everything. If a woman is sitting on her sofa reading a message from a man she met on an app, and she decides to leave it on read for 24 hours,
Yeah.
what exactly is happening in her mind?
Right.
What is the internal checklist she is running through while she pauses?
She's looking for the emotional weather of the interaction. She's filtering for tone. She's looking for emotional steadiness, discretion, judgment, and just basic self-control. The underlying question is always, will this person become sharp if the pace is slowed? She's basically running a mental simulation. If I say no or not yet, will that become awkward? Or worse, will it become coercive? Wow.
Yes.
Women are constantly testing the waters to see how a man handles a lack of immediate gratification. They are asking themselves, if I step into a vulnerable, intimate situation with this man behind closed doors, does he have the emotional regulation to handle it gracefully if things don't go exactly the way he hopes?
Right. The pause is the test.
Exactly. The pause is the test.
Which brings us to the male side of the equation. And I think we have to look at this with real, genuine compassion.
Absolutely.
Because if women are carrying an asymmetry of risk, the bodily and social danger men are carrying an asymmetry of meaning.
The asymmetry of meaning is the hidden driver of so much dysfunction here.
Totally.
For many men in these spaces, the experience of waiting to be chosen feels like a state of constant, uncomfortable exposure. Because they aren't carrying the same bodily risk, they have the luxury and really the curse of focusing entirely on their own status, desirability, and ego. So a delay in communication or a request for a slower pace is not seen as the safety mechanism we just described. It is instantly internalized as a verdict on their worth. The immediate internal monologue is, am I not good enough? Why not me? What is wrong with me?
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. We need to explain the mechanism behind why that feels so terrible. This is not just men being fragile, it is neurobiology.
Yes.
When a human being experiences social rejection, or even just the perceived threat of social exclusion, the brain lights up in the exact same areas, specifically the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, that process physical pain.
Right, it literally hurts.
It literally hurts. So when a man sends a message, puts himself out there, and receives silence in return, his brain is registering that as a physical injury. The pain is real, the anxiety is real.
100%.
But the problem is how that anxiety converts into behavior. And when that anxiety goes unnamed, it leaks into tone.
Exactly. When that status anxiety goes unnamed and unmanaged, the fight or flight system kicks in. The man feels anxious, he feels overlooked, he feels that literal sting of rejection, and he tries to solve that internal discomfort by applying external pressure.
Right.
He attempts to solve a trust problem with a sales pitch. He thinks, if I just push a little harder, if I am a little more charming, a little more persistent, I'll close the deal, get the yes, and relieve this awful anxiety I'm feeling.
But connection is not a transaction, and you cannot negotiate desire.
No, you can't.
If a man treats a woman's warm, maybe, or her need for a slower pace like a personal insult, it is like a driver who sees a yellow traffic light ahead.
That's a brilliant analogy.
Right. Instead of recognizing the yellow light as a protective signal to gently apply the brakes, slow down, and assess the junction, he takes the yellow light as a personal affront to his journey.
Yeah, how dare this light turn yellow on me?
Exactly. He feels his momentum is being stolen. So he gets angry, he honks his horn aggressively, and he accelerates toward the junction. And in doing so, he creates the exact friction and danger he was supposedly trained to avoid.
Spot on.
The woman sees him accelerating and immediately turns the light from yellow to red. Full stop.
That is the pattern we see every single day. That aggressive acceleration is exactly what moderation teams see on platforms designed for ethical non-monogamy. When men misinterpret pace, they fall into predictable, maladaptive behaviors.
Right.
In the operational frameworks we review, there are 4 very distinct failure modes that emerge from this anxiety. And it's worth spending time on each of these because they reveal the precise moments where connection breaks down.
We absolutely need to detail those 4 failure modes. If you are listening to this right now, I want you to mentally audit your own past conversations as we go through these. We are not pointing fingers, we are looking at the mechanics of lost connection.
Exactly.
So what is the first failure mode?
The first is pressure after uncertainty. Let's look at how this plays out in reality. A man suggests meeting up for a drink on a Friday. The woman replies, I'm having a really exhausting week at work. I might need to see how I feel closer to the time. She has introduced uncertainty. She's put up a yellow light. The anxious response, the pressure response, is the man replying immediately with, come on, it's just one drink. It will help you unwind. I promise I won't keep you out late.
Right. And I want to dissect why that is so damaging, because to the man, he thinks he's being encouraging.
Yes.
He thinks he's being charmingly persistent. He thinks he is showing her that he really genuinely wants to see her. But what is she actually experiencing in that moment?
She's experiencing her boundary being treated as a negotiation.
Right.
She just communicated that she is tired and needs space to assess her own energy.
Right.
Instead of validating that, he essentially told her, your assessment of your energy is incorrect. My desire to see you is more important, and I am going to apply pressure until you yield. He has failed the safety filter. If he can't handle a boundary about scheduling coffee, how on earth can she trust him to handle a boundary about physical intimacy? He has taken a trust problem and applied a high-pressure sales tactic.
That is such a vital distinction. He turned a yellow light into a collision.
Spot on.
What is the second failure mode?
The second is entitlement after silence. This is incredibly common. A man sends a message, the woman reads it, but she's at the supermarket or she's dealing with her children, or she simply doesn't have the emotional bandwidth to engage in flirting at that exact second.
Right. Life happens.
Exactly. So she leaves it on read. 18 hours go by. The man's attachment system goes into overdrive. The physical pain of perceived rejection kicks in.
Yes.
To regain a sense of control and alleviate his anxiety, he sends a follow-up message. Guess you're too busy for me then. Or nice talking to you with a little trailing punctuation mark.
Ah, yes. It is the passive-aggressive prod.
Yeah.
And I have to say, it is the most self-sabotaging move imaginable.
100%.
Because if she was just busy and she was planning to reply when she sat down with a cup of tea that evening, that passive-aggressive follow-up instantly kills any desire to engage.
Instantly.
It proves that her attention is being treated as a commodity that he is rightfully owed. It completely validates her initial instinct to be cautious.
Totally. It proves the filter was necessary. She looks at that message and thinks, if he is this demanding and resentful after 18 hours of silence on an app, what kind of demands is he going to place on me in a real relationship? It's a massive red flag for poor emotional regulation.
Which leads us to the third failure mode, which is slightly more subtle but equally disruptive. Private escalation pressure. How does this manifest?
This is the rush to move the conversation off the secure platform and onto a private messaging app like WhatsApp, Telegram, or regular SMS before any real trust has been established. You see it within the first few messages. I don't check here often. Here is my number.
Now, I want to challenge this gently, because a lot of people genuinely don't like the interfaces of dating apps.
That's true.
They want to move to a platform they use normally in their day-to-day life. Is it always a red flag to want to move off platform?
It's not about the interface. It is about the architecture of safety. Dating and lifestyle platforms have moderation teams. They have block functions. They have reporting mechanisms. They represent the woman's safety net.
Right.
When a man tries to bypass that immediately, he is essentially asking her to drop her safety net to prove she's interested. The psychology behind why men do this is fascinating. They want to secure private access to her before she can change her mind, or before another man captures her attention.
So it's rooted in anxiety again.
100%. It's an anxious attempt to lock down the connection, but by rushing her out of her safe environment, he creates immense friction. He is prioritizing his need for secure access over her need for paced safety.
He is trying to bypass the protective friction. That makes total sense. And that brings us to the fourth and undoubtedly the most damaging failure mode.
Yes, retaliatory tone. This happens when a rejection is finally made explicit or when the non-response continues for days. The man's ego threat, that pain we discussed earlier, converts directly into anger as a defense mechanism.
Right.
The vulnerability of waiting becomes too much to bear, so the ego protects itself by lashing out. The language becomes sharp, punishing, or derogatory. You're not that pretty anyway, or you're clearly not cut out for this lifestyle.
The tragedy of the retaliatory tone is that it burns the bridge to ash. And we really must emphasize for you listening, noting these four failure modes is not about labeling people as inherently toxic.
No, absolutely not.
We're not sitting here saying these are bad men with dark hearts. We're looking at poorly judged conduct that is driven by a very human fear of exclusion and profound status anxiety.
Exactly.
When you feel you're invisible in a space where others seem to be thriving, it hurts deeply.
Yeah.
But the crucial step is recognizing that acting out of that hurt, letting that anxiety dictate your tone, makes you fundamentally less safe to connect with.
That is the reality. Disappointment is a perfectly normal human emotion. Feeling a sting when a message is ignored is normal. It is what you do with that disappointment that defines your conduct and dictates your trustworthiness. You can feel the anxiety, but you cannot let it drive the car.
Now, we need to bridge this conversation into a different environment, because it is incredibly easy to listen to this and think, well, this is just a problem for single men on dating apps. I am in a committed relationship. This doesn't apply to me.
Right.
But the truth is, this exact dynamic, this severe asymmetry of pace, risk, and meaning shows up squarely in the middle of couples who are stepping into non-monogamy together. It just wears a different mask.
It absolutely does. The mirror of this dynamic exists right inside the dyad. Let's look at a scenario that plays out in living rooms every single night. A couple, married for maybe 5 or 6 years, decides to open their relationship. They create a joint profile on a lifestyle platform. They sit on the sofa on a Tuesday night. You almost always have one partner who is ready to accelerate, who is feeling the excitement, the curiosity, the drive to experience new things immediately.
That's the accelerator.
Exactly. They are eagerly swiping, sending messages, looking at event calendars.
And sitting right next to them is the other partner, who is getting quieter and quieter.
Yes.
They are applying the brakes. They want to read every single word of a profile before swiping. They feel overwhelmed by the influx of attention. The slower partner is the one carrying the asymmetry of risk within the relationship.
Got on.
They are filtering for safety, emotional steadiness, and meaning, just like a single woman does. They're asking, Is our marriage strong enough to handle this person we are looking at?
Exactly. And the faster partner looks at that hesitation and feels rejected. The faster partner thinks, we agreed to do this. We talked about it for months. Why are you putting the brakes on now? Why are you overthinking everything?
And this is where we have to gently but firmly push back on so much of the common relationship advice you see in lifestyle forums. The cultural narrative often labels the slower partner as the fun police.
Oh, all the time.
Right. People will post online saying, my partner agreed to open up, but now they are dragging their feet on every single person we talk to. How do I get them to just relax and have fun? It is so incredibly easy to view the cautious partner as deliberately obstructive. But if we view it that way, we destroy the foundation of the couple.
100%.
How do we completely reframe that mindset?
We reframe it by applying a massive coaching paradigm shift. Slower pacing inside a couple is not automatically obstruction. It is not a veto designed to ruin your evening.
Right.
It is wise sequencing. The faster partner needs to stop asking, how do we get past this caution so we can get to the fun, and start asking, what is this caution trying to protect?
What is this caution trying to protect?
Yeah.
If you are the faster partner in a dynamic, you need to write that question down and memorize it. Because usually that caution is trying to protect the relationship itself. It is trying to ensure that when you bring someone else into your shared intimate space, the floorboards are solid enough to hold the weight of that new dynamic. You wouldn't invite guests over to a house that was actively on fire.
No, you wouldn't.
The slower partner is checking the wiring.
Spot on. The cautious partner is doing the vital, unglamorous work of filtering the environment for both of you. And the absolute worst thing a couple can do in that scenario, and we see this constantly, is to try and outsource their internal clarity to an external third party.
Oh, expand on that. What does outsourcing internal clarity look like in practice?
It looks like the faster partner saying, let's just go to the club and see how we feel, or let's just meet this guy for a drink. Maybe he will put you at ease. They are using a stranger as a catalyst to resolve their internal marital pacing mismatch. You cannot bring a new person into the mix, hoping they will act as a buffer or a magic solution to your own lack of alignment. You have to protect the unit first. You have to turn to each other on the sofa and name what each partner needs to feel safe and respected before you even consider opening the door to someone else.
It is profoundly unfair to the third party as well. You are bringing a human being into a situation and secretly assigning them the job of couples counselor. It never works. It only creates more friction.
100%. It's a disaster waiting to happen.
Which brings us to auditing the solution. If the old phrase, women choose, men are chosen, is fundamentally broken, and if the marketplace analogy leads to all this unnecessary friction, resentment, and posturing, what replaces it? We need a clear-eyed framework that actually reflects how healthy ethical connection operates in the real world.
Yes. The definitive framework, and this is the core of what modern ethical platforms and educators are trying to teach, operates on three distinct pillars. If we can internalize these three pillars, the entire culture shifts.
Okay, let's hear them.
Here they are. Women are sovereign over pace and access. Men earn trust through conduct. Couples protect the unit through clarity and alignment.
I want to break those down, starting with the first. Women are sovereign over pace and access. Redefining pace is critical here. There is a brilliant takeaway from what we are seeing in healthy communities, which is this. Slower is not the same as colder.
That is a vital distinction, and it goes directly against the conditioning of modern digital communication. For women, choosing slowly is not a game.
Right.
It is not an attempt to lead someone on, and it is certainly not a strategy to artificially inflate her own ego. Choosing slowly is simply how safety is methodically protected. We have to dismantle this pervasive idea that a quick response is the only polite response. You do not owe speed in order to be kind.
I'm so glad you said that. Because women internalize the pressure just as much as men externalize it. Women feel guilty for not replying fast enough. They feel they are being rude.
Exactly.
But we have to establish that taking your time to assess your own comfort is a fundamental right. And similarly, you do not need to over-explain a boundary for it to count.
Absolutely not.
If your pace is slow, you do not owe someone a 5-paragraph essay detailing your past relationship traumas, your current scheduling conflicts, and your emotional bandwidth to justify why you need 3 days to reply. A boundary is a boundary. The right person, a safe person, will respect the boundary without demanding a dissertation on why it exists.
Exactly. And this leads us directly into the second pillar, redefining conduct. This is the practical application for men. This is how men actually become easier to choose. The reality we have to confront is that for a man, his desire is not proof of his readiness.
I want to repeat that because it is the linchpin of the whole argument. Your desire is not proof of your readiness.
Just because you want connection, just because you feel ready to meet, just because you have a free evening and a lot of affection to give, does not mean you are entitled to access someone else's space.
Right.
You are not being asked to perform harder, to be more alpha, to buy a better camera for your profile pictures, or to use slicker pickup lines. You are being asked to relate better. It is about emotional regulation.
I love the phrasing we discussed earlier. It is about standing out less and landing well more. We are so obsessed with standing out in a crowded inbox, but standing out usually just means being louder, which translates to pressure.
100%.
How do you land well? Let's look at a real-world scenario that, from your coaching experience, illustrates this perfectly. Imagine a scenario where a man is having a genuinely warm, engaging messaging exchange with a single woman. The banter is good, they share some laughs. He suggests meeting up for a drink on Thursday, and she replies with this exact message. Maybe? I'm not sure yet.
That right there is the crucible moment. That is the exact juncture where the failure modes we discussed earlier are either triggered or completely bypassed.
Yes.
Because to the anxious, unregulated mind, maybe, I'm not sure yet, feels like a devastating rejection. It feels like she is pulling the rug out. The instinct is to either withdraw coldly to protect the ego or to push back and say, what do you mean you aren't sure? We've been having a great time talking for 3 days. What's the problem?
And if he does that, if he pushes back or gets defensive, what happens?
He fails the safety filter immediately. Full stop. He proves that her caution was entirely justified because he just demonstrated that he cannot regulate his own disappointment when he doesn't get an immediate yes.
Right.
He showed that her comfort is secondary to his validation. But the steady man, the man who understands that trust is earned strictly through conduct that interprets that maybe completely differently, he assumes caution rather than insult. He understands she's filtering for safety, not judging his inherent worth as a human being.
So what does the steady response actually look like? If a man is sitting there reading, maybe, I'm not sure yet, what should he type back?
The steady response does 2 things. It reduces pressure and it increases options. He replies with something remarkably simple like, no worries at all. If it helps, what would make meeting feel comfortable for you?
It is brilliant because it is entirely disarming. Let us look at the psychology of that response. First, no worries at all immediately diffuses the tension. It validates her pace without making a big dramatic deal out of it. It shows he is not threatened by her boundary. He is steady. And then, by asking, what would make meeting feel comfortable for you, he shifts the entire dynamic from making demands to offering collaboration.
Exactly.
He proves in that single short message that he is emotionally regulated, patient, and focused on her comfort rather than his own immediate gratification. That is how you land well.
Yeah.
That is how conduct earns trust. It is not about a flashy opening line. It is about how you handle the yellow light.
That one shift in perspective changes the entire landscape of connection. It takes the interaction out of the adversarial zero-sum marketplace and turns it into a genuine, cooperative human exchange.
Totally.
But we also have to acknowledge the reality of the environment we are in. It is incredibly difficult to maintain that steadiness, that emotional regulation, when the entire digital landscape of the modern world is actively designed to work against it. Which brings us to our final point, designing for steadiness and the concept of protective friction.
This is such a crucial piece of the puzzle because we cannot ignore the role that technology plays in shaping our behavior. We live in a swipe culture. Mainstream dating apps have spent the last decade conditioning our brains to expect instant access, instant gratification, and relentless gamified pace.
They really have.
They have removed all the friction from connecting. You can swipe on 100 faces while waiting for the kettle to boil, which sounds great in theory, but in practice, it removes all the baseline safeguarding as well.
It creates a culture of profound disposability. If you can swipe right on 100 people in 2 minutes, none of those interactions carry any real weight.
No, not at all.
The asymmetry of meaning is completely distorted. And when people bring that swipe culture mentality, the expectation of instant, frictionless access into intentional, non-monogamous spaces or lifestyle communities, the mismatch is incredibly jarring. It is disastrous for trust.
I want to introduce an analogy here to explain what we mean by protective friction. Think of protective friction not as a locked door meant to keep you out, but as the bouncer at a very high-end exclusive club.
Oh, I like that.
The bouncer makes you wait outside behind the velvet rope for 10 minutes. He doesn't do this because the club is at physical capacity. He does it to see how you behave while you wait.
Mm.
Are you the kind of guy who stands patiently, chatting with your friends, comfortable in your own skin?
Right.
Or are you the kind of guy who kicks the rope, swears at the staff, and demands to see the manager because you think you're too important to wait? The wait is the test. The friction is the filter.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it, and this is exactly why healthy communities and well-designed platforms intentionally build that bouncer, that protective friction back into their digital systems.
Yes.
A healthy culture does not reduce its baseline safeguarding just to ease male frustration or to artificially boost daily activity metrics. It keeps paced access and earned progression intact. It requires people to read profiles, to understand the community ethos, and to demonstrate good conduct in small interactions before they are given unlimited access to the wider community.
So what does this all mean for you listening to this episode? How do you apply this? It means that if you encounter a space, a platform, or a relationship dynamic that requires patience, that asks you to slow down, you should view that protective friction as a gift.
100%.
It is not an obstacle designed to annoy you or belittle you. It is a guardrail. It stops well-meaning but anxious people from making impulsive, ego-driven mistakes. It enforces a period of education and emotional regulation before access is granted.
Totally. When you embrace protective friction, your entire mindset shifts. You stop seeing other people's boundaries as hurdles you have to jump over or negotiate around, and you start seeing them as the very architecture that makes safe, ethical connection possible in the first place.
Yes.
Without those boundaries, without that friction, the space isn't safe for anyone.
This has been such a vital and honestly quite profound journey today. If we are going to summarize what we have covered, we have to start by validating the very real human experience at the center of all this. Feeling disappointed by a slow pace, feeling the sting of not being chosen, feeling anxious when a message goes unanswered. That is incredibly human.
It is.
We all want to be desired. We all want to feel seen and valued. But what matters is what you do in the space between feeling that anxiety and sending your next message. We aren't asking anyone to posture. We aren't asking you to pretend you don't care or to suppress your emotions. We are asking everyone to regulate those feelings better, to understand the hidden architecture of risk and safety, and to conduct yourself in a way that makes trust easier to build.
If we can synthesize this episode into 3 useful, actionable takeaways for our listeners, they would be these. First, do not turn someone else's pace into a referendum on your own value. Someone taking their time is not an insult to your worth. It is simply information about their readiness, their need for safety, and the overall fit of the dynamic.
Spot on. What's the second one?
Second, a warm maybe is not a yes, but it is certainly not an insult. Treat it as a request for more time and more trust, not as a rejection to be argued with. Assume caution, not insult.
Brilliant. And the third?
And third, inside a couple, always protect the unit first. You must name what each of you needs to feel safe and honor the slower partner's caution as wise sequencing before inviting anyone else into your shared dynamic.
Those are powerful structural standards to carry forward into any connection you make. And it leaves us with one final provocative thought to mull over as you go about your week. The next time you feel that sudden, urgent urge to push for an answer, to double message, to force a connection forward just because the silence is making you uncomfortable, pause and ask yourself a very honest question. Are you actually trying to connect with them in that moment, or are you just trying to relieve your own anxiety?
Thanks for listening. We hope we've helped you uncover a deeper understanding around connecting with other people and give you the courage to be honest with yourself, your partner, and those people you connect with.
Our only ask is, if you know one person you feel would benefit from listening to our conversation, please point them in our direction. Let's start a conversation about how we can all build better connections.
And if you have any questions, a theme, or a topic you'd like us to cover, please give us a like, leave a comment, and we'll get it scheduled into the running order.
Be kind to yourself.
Until next time, less scrolling, more soul.